Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Thursday Night Football Week 10 here. Got a weird one between the Raiders and the Broncos. Divisional game. We know these teams get up for each other. We're going to be taking a look at the matchups and the insights that you need to get your bets down here for Week 10 on Thursday night. Got Nate coming on with a couple bets that he likes, including a side in this game, and then we'll get to those player props as well. So if that all sounds good, give this video a like. Let's get right into it. Kicking things off here with the Raiders on offense, and looking at them, it's all bad, right? You can see bottom 6, 7 in pretty much every important offensive category here, passing yards and EPA, rush yards and EPA. Denver's defense actually underperforming over the course of the season based on expectations coming into the season, if you look at the amount of yards that they're giving up. But the key for Denver, and we'll talk about this with them on offense, is that they're playing incredibly fast. They're getting a ton of plays in during the game, Sean Payton style. So a lot of plays on offense, which also means they're also giving up a good amount of plays on defense. Their games have a lot of plays in them. But I do think they're going to be able to, the Raiders, I should say, will be able to move the ball a little bit better than we might think in this one. Jacoby Myers being gone now and getting traded, I kind of think is actually going to be helpful for the way that Geno Smith, Trey Tucker, and now both tight ends are going to be playing. That's the key, is a lot of jumbo stuff here for this Raiders offense. And I think we're going to keep seeing it this way. The 13th in pass play percentage for them, meaning they are continuing to pass a lot. And I'm calling them the wandering Raiders here because I don't believe that they sort of have a strong game plan. I think they want to run the ball. That's the problem. You've got Chip Kelly, you've got Pete Carroll. They want to run the ball. They just can't because they're always losing. And that offensive line got beat up early in the season and still hasn't really gotten healthy. And if you look at Denver, they are actually giving up more passes. They've been leading a good amount. Their rush defense has been really, really good. And their pass defense has actually been missing Pat Surtain a bunch. So that's why teams are actually trying to pass on Denver a bit more. I do think that'll be the case once again for the Raiders, even though, as Nate will come on and talk about here in a minute, I do think that they're going to keep this thing relatively close. Looking at them on defense, putting the Broncos on offense, Broncos, it seems like they've been underwhelming if you just are watching their games. But in reality, like, they're 11th in pass yards, 4th in rush yards, and their rush EPA is really the thing that stands out to me. 9th in rush EPA. And the Raiders, while they have better metrics on defense against the run than they do against the pass, I do think that Denver is going to have some success running the ball on this team, and they'll try to do that to neutralize guys like Max Crosby, which is why it's kind of surprising that they're better against the run than the pass for the Raiders. But the Broncos can do it both ways, really. They're 16th in terms of pass play percentage, so they're really right in the middle of the field, very balanced in how they're attacking with the run and the pass. I think they're going to be able to run a good amount, and teams have tried to run on the Raiders more than pass, in part because they're always winning. So despite the fact that I am saying that the Raiders can keep this thing relatively close, I still think that the Broncos are going to run a bunch in a neutral script with the Raiders. So if they're only winning by 7 or 3 or whatever, I still think that they're going to be looking to run the ball a ton on this Raiders defense. Novig is the book of the month here on LandYourBets.com, the sportsbook exchange where you can bet peer-to-peer rather than have to go up against the sportsbooks. Set your own lines. Go ahead and bet the lines that you feel like betting that are available from your peers there. Sign up, get a free month in the VIP. So use code LYB and then just hit us up, support@LandYourBets.com. That's the email address. Let us know, hey, I signed up for Novig using code LYB. Love to try the projections and the bets that Nate and I are putting down each month on LandYourBets.com. All right, Nate is here to talk about the Raiders. I'm bringing him on a little earlier than normal because we've got to look at a side here, and it is the Raiders Super Bowl. That's what I've been calling it. It is every year because they're rarely in the mix for anything other than beating the Broncos as a meaningful game for them. So I do think that the plus 9.5 has some value. In addition to the sort of bring it all against your biggest foe in the division, what else do you have to support the Raiders possibly doing this now without Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, I don't really mind the fact that Jacoby Myers is not in this game. I don't think it's a big deal. I think he was kind of checked out. Yeah, I think the edge here is the Raiders defense against the Broncos offense, really. I mean, the Broncos might have depth on that line, but Max Crosby's the best player in this game. Like, hands down, not even close. Pat Surtain's not playing. Right. Pat Surtain not playing means Riley Moss, the DPI machine, is your island top corner. Like, that's why it's hard to take props against the Broncos ever, is because this guy just pulls people down instead of letting them get the touchdown, right? I mean, that's important for a game pick. But I mean, I'm reluctant to take even Brock Bowers here to follow up on what he did. But I do think that having Bowers in there is going to open things up for other guys. I think it obviously gives Geno confidence, a little bit of swagger back. That Geno we saw for like 5 weeks was just like completely out of character, right? I mean, the offensive line was a mess. Raiders got right a little bit over their bye, figured some things out at least. So I think they can hang. I mean, 10 points in a division game on a short week is just pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's just gonna be ugly. So like, let's just get ugly with it. And I do think that like I'm starting with the angle being, yeah, this game really matters to them. They are going to be playing a bit more, a lot more actually, not a bit more, a ton more 12, right? Packaged with jumbos and two tight ends, because you got two really good receiving tight ends out there. Now you kind of have one-ish wide receiver that you trust. Really don't have a deep threat. So yeah, I think they're going to do the intermediary stuff, and Geno will be able to at least carve his way a bit more downfield than would be expected. Don't know how much success they'll have with the run game. Don't know how much they'll turn to the run game, but I do think the dink and dunk is going to be what they need, right?
I think there might be a connection there, though, that like if you think the Raiders are covering, get Genty 14 carries, 15, 16 carries in that range and expect him to have some success. Because that's how teams hang in the game against the Broncos, right? You got to soften up the pass rush. You got to pound the rock. You don't want to be dropping back that many times. Even if their corners are a little more vulnerable right now, like you don't want to be leaving Geno vulnerable to those pass rushers.
Yeah, that's completely fair. But all right, I appreciate this, Nate. We're going to get you right back on here in just a minute. We're going to bring Nate's player prop that he's looking at as well. So we know Nate likes the Raiders, and I do like Brock Bowers. So I agree with him on that at the very least. And I could see this team covering for sure. But what's key here to me is that the Swishland projections spit out some Brock Bowers intel that was saying, we're going to just continue to see two tight ends on the field for this team for the rest of the season, right? Because Mayer and Brock Bowers, two of the better receiving tight ends actually in the league on one team, not necessarily blocking wise for the run game, but again, they're going to continue to be passing. And we saw last week 80% snaps for both Bowers and Mayer, and this is where you beat the Broncos. So everything's sort of lining up. The matchup, while it's not a good one for any pass game in terms of the defense for the Broncos, it is one that they're going to, in terms of where the tight end is running his routes, that's going to be a better play here than wide receivers against the Broncos. So if you look at the middle of the field, those sort of intermediate routes, right around like 10 to 12 yards, that's where guys like Bowers are running down the seams. I think he's going to look at like 12 targets in this game. So it's just going to be a matter of if he catches like 5 of them. I think he's going to be good for the yards. It's a high number, both on the yards and the receptions for Bowers, because I just think everything, the pass funnel, everything is going to just push targets to Brock Bowers in this game. With the amount that I see the Raiders passing, I still think we can get some stuff on Trey Tucker as well for the receiving. I got to go for the receptions, even though I'm not too scared of the yards because they are still really low. And obviously there's no more Jakobi Meyers in Vegas, right? So it is his sort of wide receiver room, if you will. It always was, to be honest. He was always running almost 100% of the routes, if not 100% every game, and had a lot of targets and a lot of first read targets. Geno looking at Trey Tucker a lot on those crossing routes, slants, and the like. So he has a low A dot. I think it goes up a little bit in this one. Even when he's running from the slot, I do see him sort of running down the seams like we've talked about. Those intermediate middle of the field routes, that's where the Broncos are a bit more vulnerable. And that's where guys like Trey Tucker and Brock Bowers, for that matter, will both be running their routes. Looking for the yak for Trey Tucker, but not wanting to have to rely on it. So I think he's good for 5 to 6 receptions in this game. And that's how I'd be targeting him before I really got into the yards. Let's look at J.K. Dobbins. One prop I want to bring up before I bring Nate back on to talk about his couple props that he wants to look at. I do think Dobbins is good here. And Nate's going to talk about RJ Harvey, and I'm not opposed to RJ Harvey. We'll talk about him here in a minute. The key here is that if you think this game is relatively close, if you think this game is going to be anywhere inside of 10 points consistently throughout, then J.K. Dobbins is going to be on the field more, right? I said they're going to be looking to run. And even though we've seen RJ Harvey eat into his snap percentage over the course of the last week, in 2 weeks or so, really in the last 3-4 weeks, J.K. Dobbins has seen a little bit of a decrease in snap share, giving it a little bit to RJ Harvey. One, that's been in games that they've won by a lot. We'll say that. In the 3 games that RJ Harvey has actually gone over his rushing prop, they've won by an average of 18 points per game in those 3 games that RJ Harvey went over, right? Then you look at the fact that even though he's splitting those snaps a bit more, he's still getting the bulk of the rushes. So 15 rush attempts last week for him in a close game. And we saw RJ Harvey get, I think, like 4-ish attempts last week in a close game against the Texans. Played a good amount, just didn't eat into the share of rushes that are going to go to J.K. Dobbins. RJ Harvey, a much better receiver out of the backfield than J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, a much better runner. And we're going to see Sean Payton use them that way in this game. So let's see what Nate has to say about that in terms of the player props here. All right, Nate's here to combat a little bit what I'm saying about J.K. Dobbins because he does have some support for R.J. Harvey. I don't know that both things are necessarily totally antithesis of each other. I think they could both occur in this game, but I think game flow is going to be really important here. And my theory is that the game flow will be a little bit closer, a little bit more neutral than we might be expecting, and that is actually going to leave the starter on the field. And I'm looking at the correlation between blowouts and R.J. Harvey, but you're kind of looking at how recently R.J. Harvey started to even out the snap share regardless of the game context. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the closest game possible last week, and Harvey played 31% of the snaps, Dobbins 46%, because it was a matchup where you had to throw the ball a little bit to the backs, and Dobbins is absolutely pitiful as a receiver. Like if you just fade his receiving, so I mean, it's just a gulf between the numbers. I'm not bullish on Harvey rushing because he's not going to get too many carries, but he's at 11.5 receiving yards. He's at 8.5 longest reception. Basically, we're implying like if he catches a ball, he's going over this prop. And he caught 5 last week. It's similar defensive strategies to a degree in that Texans are the 3rd highest zone rate. Raiders are 5th highest. RJ Harvey also burned the Cowboys, who are the 7th highest zone rate. And the Raiders, they don't allow a lot of deep passes. They drop into a lot of cover 3, force stuff underneath. That's what Bo Nix has been taking a lot. So I don't really love any of his receivers to go off down the field. I mean, we did see Nix hit Javonte for 5 for 50 in the first matchup last year. And like I said, I don't think Dobbins is the receiver. So if Sean Payton sees something that he likes, I think he's going to keep rotating Harvey in. Like he would ideally like to have the Ingram Kamara split here, right? That's what Sean Payton wants to work towards. He doesn't trust Harvey at all, like on that level, but it's building. When you see the snap rise, you see 42% of the routes, 27% target share on those routes. Like clearly you want to get ahead of this a little bit. And on a short week with the starter, as you say, like starter name has an extensive injury history versus a rookie who's like just going to be good to go. Like I think it could be closer to 60-40 than any sort of like clear, like Harvey needs some sort of blowout to get in there. Like I think he's going to be playing.
So I think what we're saying here though is like we're still saying the same thing in to a degree, right? Because I'm saying rushing opportunity goes to Dobbins still, and you're not disagreeing with that. You're saying receiving opportunity share goes to RJ Harvey, and I'm in no way going to argue that. My biggest support of Dobbins rushing over RJ Harvey receiving, if we're to pit them against each other, is game script and the fact that the opponents for this Raiders team are rushing at about like a top 7 rate, right? So technically bottom 7 if you consider that the defense for the Raiders. Game script would indicate and really just strength on strength or strength for the Broncos in terms of how they match up with the Raiders defense would be a little bit more to the rush. Both are very possible. And I think even if it's like 70-30 Dobbins, I still like RJ Harvey on short receiving yards to your point here.
We did just see Travis Etienne go for 21 carries, right? But 4 catches. So if you split Travis Etienne into 2 players, then maybe both get home here. Just 70 yards just seems like a lot for a guy like Dobbins to me, who's not a very explosive runner in my opinion.
It's true. And again, I do want I actually want this game to stay close. Like I know that the model that we have here on Swishland Projections is looking at the Dobbins stuff and going closer to 80 yards than 70. The model does take into consideration the spread and use that as far as game script goes and goes, well, if they're favored by 10, he's going to get 3 to 4 extra carries in the second half kind of thing. And I don't know if that's the case. I'm actually banking on a different theory here, which is they're going to be close. They want the starter for the rushing opportunities. They're going to rush a lot. I like him for 15 to 16 attempts. And then RJ Harvey for 3 to 4 targets sounds just fine to me as well.
I think if the Broncos cover, it's because Geno gets sacked. He throws interceptions. He gives them short fields. It's not going to be because like the Broncos are doing a bunch of 75-yard drives and punching it down the field.
Yeah, they ain't going to be marching. I would agree with that. But all right, either way, good looks here, Nate. I appreciate the convo. And we will be back with plenty of stuff there this weekend. Nate's got his closing lines episode. I'll have player props. So make sure you subscribe and check that out. And until we see you next, Nate, happy betting. And that is all the time we have for you in this one. Appreciate Nate jumping on as always. We'll see. I think RJ Harvey gets the receiving yards. I think J.K. Dobbins gets the rush yards. So I'm really not worried about either guy there. But hopefully you guys get something out of the episode. Best of luck on Thursday night. Don't miss Nate's closing lines for this week. Also going to have my player props for the weekend. So until we see you next, happy betting.